So I will begin with my usual greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and in Europe, in Dubai. Good late afternoon to our friends in early evening, to our friends in India. Good evening, everybody in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Hope you're all well. Last time I spoke with you, I believe it was the 7th, JC? 7th of July?
Yes, right.
On that day, I didn't know it yet, but it had been announced that I was offered an official title by the King of Thailand. A little bit similar to being called Sir in countries like England and Australia in the Commonwealth. So I did receive an official title. My formal name is Tan Chao Kun Bajira Nyanamuni, which means the Venerable with knowledge, diamond-like knowledge of peacefulness. That's a pretty cool name. But you can just call me Ajahn. It's a bit long, but I do like the name. It has a very nice meaning. So the first part of the Rama X, current King of Thailand's name is Maha Vajira Longkorn. So the name, monks often get that name as a diamond-like, the same as in the Vajrayana, the diamond vehicle. And so it was the next day that the official announcement was made. I was bhikkhu number 15 in a group of monks who got special titles, and it was very lovely because several of my teachers were in that group. So Ajahn also got his title, a higher one than me, which is suitable. He is Tan Jakun Rat Vajira Nyan. What's very interesting is Lumpur Biek, another of my teachers, has the name Tan Jakun Rat Vajira Muni. So Ajahn Anan, Tan Jakun Rat Vajira Nyan, Ajahn Biek, Tan Jakun Vajira Muni, and Ajahn also is Jakun Vajira Nyan Muni. So Ajahn Biek and Ajahn Anan are like my mother and father in Dhamma. So I like this. I think whoever chooses the name, quite possibly the king himself, I think he probably had a look at the pictures in biography and saw that Tan Ajahn Anan and Lumpur Biek come to Anandagiri with some regularity. They're teachers of mine. So some people feel it's a little bit unusual because I guess on average, people would get a title like this around the age of 55 or 60. So at 49, it's a little bit unusual. But I do know a couple of Jakuns much younger than myself, so it does happen sometimes. Anyway, according to Ajahn, it's not actually something that I had especially desired, by the way. It's just one of those things. Ajahn Anand told me to offer it to the Buddha and offer it to Ajahn Chah. No need to make anything out of it. And who gets these things, who doesn't get these things is depending partly on various types of karmas that we've created in this and previous lives. And if somebody gives you some kind of honor, well then it's up to us to continue to be worthy of the honor, isn't it? So I have to continue to be a good bhikkhu, encourage you to the best of my abilities. What's very interesting is, so I got my citizenship, my Thai citizenship, as a special offering from His Majesty on the 4th of July. And I got this title on the 7th of July. And so on the 8th of July, I had some of the most wicked food poisoning I've ever had. And I wasn't actually very surprised, because sometimes in life, if you have too many good things happening too soon, it's like stirring up the old files, and some bad karma has to write them too. So I had terrible diarrhea, and I ended up having to have a drip and oxygen for a day, because I wasn't able to keep in liquid, and I was weak, not breathing very deeply. Oxygen level was falling a bit in the blood. So we have a métis here, of course, who is a pharmacist. She was checking, having people check my oxygen level, blood pressure, etc. And then, because I had a fever of 38.5 Celsius, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but fever. And then everyone got paranoid that I might have COVID. So the next day, they forced me to go to hospital to have a COVID test. And I was a little bit irritated. But I speak with Ajahn about it. I said, Ajahn, I know it's not COVID. Ajahn, I know it's food poisoning, because I believe I've had both. And he said, yes, but at the moment, anybody with a high fever, everybody's paranoid that it might be COVID. So just to calm everyone else down, for the sake of harmony, just go. So they sent the ambulance into the monastery with flashing sirens. And then everyone in the whole area was sure that Ajahn had COVID, of course. And anyway, I had the test. I don't have COVID. And interesting. So citizenship on the 4th, a royal title on the 7th, food poisoning and dramas at the hospital on the 8th. And now life has gone back to something like normal. Thank goodness. And I believe that we have some Dharma questions, JC.
Yes, we do, Rajan. It's so interesting that you went back with the police or the royalty escort on the 7th, and on the 8th, the ambulance come and pick you up.
Yes, I had a medical escort on the 8th. So
Good that everything is okay now, Rajan.
yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Rajan, question number 1. Hi, Ajahn. Can you please explain how to contemplate the 5 aggregates and how to see it as empty in our daily life? Thank you.
So yes, let's go through what the 5 aggregates are first. We do this, you do this in your morning chanting. Rupang anicchang, Vedana anicca, Sanya anicca, Sankhara anicca, Vinyanang anicchang. So these are the 5 khandhas. Form, feelings, Sanya, Rupang anicca, Vedana anicca, Sanya, perceptions, memories, Sankhara, karmic formations, Vinyanang, consciousness. We also go through this, often chant when I lead retreats, we go through the Anattalakkhana Sutta, the Sutta on not self, and Lord Buddha goes through this again. Not to see these things as I or as mine. So the tendency that we have is to grasp these things which are clumped together, functioning together as mine and as self. But when we investigate them more closely, it becomes possible to see that there is no self there. Self is a delusion or a habitual assumption that we add. Sakkaya Ditthi. The self view is something that we add to the experience of this conglomerate or set of aggregates. How do we contemplate it in daily life? So that is a bit tricky. And because in daily life, the level of mindfulness isn't so sharp and lucid and present in most people. In daily life, we try to maintain a broad awareness to make sure we're keeping our precepts and make sure our speech is fairly wholesome, make sure we don't kind of go off the rails, and be aware of our postures. It's in daily life, it's often like damage control. And then we do our real practice or more refined practice on our meditation cushion, where you can get a sharper quality of mindfulness and have a closer look. But some people, of course, who have a peaceful lifestyle or who are semi-retired or people who are meditating several times per day, then it does become possible to have an active contemplative life, meditation practice, contemplative practice throughout your day. So obviously how to contemplate the body. This is normally when we're talking about cultivating mindfulness. Mindfulness is the path to the deathless. When the 4 foundations of mindfulness are cultivated, made much of, they lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So with regards contemplating a body in daily life, I wouldn't recommend it so much. What I would recommend is being aware of the postures and aware of the feelings. So because what you want to do is you want to have a good sense of presence in your body in the present moment. But when you come to do your meditation practice, that's when you can have a look at parts of the body as elements, or the 32 parts, for example, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, heart, liver, kidneys, blood. You can go through the parts in a meditation posture. But in a daily activities, it's that maintaining a consistent mindfulness, which is what we want to aim for. So then being aware of the physical posture and being aware of the feelings in your body when you're sitting or when you're walking or when you're moving through a door. So I think the best one of these 5 khandhas to focus upon is feelings, because you always have them. And so if you train yourself to be aware of feelings in the body, and then the feelings of your breath is always with you. So in particular, if you want to see the emptiness or the not self aspect of these 5 aggregates, it's the anicca, the changing and the cessation of feelings is an area where you can, because the thing about mindfulness, the thing that makes mindfulness strong and the thing that makes mindfulness practice powerful is the consistency. So a lot of people, I think, are thinking they just need to find the right method, and they feel that they're not progressing it because they haven't yet quite found the right method. And I don't think that that's correct. I think we all have enough methods. The issue is, which one can we pick up and use so that we can be really consistent with it? Because it's when we're consistent with our objects of mindfulness that the mindfulness gets stronger, and then the insight becomes possible. So in terms of consciousness, for example, the way the Buddha explains it, there's eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, ear consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. And they're all, ear consciousness is arising upon hearing a sound. Tongue consciousness is arising upon having a taste. Nose consciousness arising upon contacting smells. And all of these things are arising and ceasing. And if a practitioner has mahasati, really good mindfulness, apparently, suppose you're a sakadagami or an arahant, anagami or an arahant, these great practitioners can see the arising and ceasing of consciousness at the sense basis. They can, but that's advanced practice. In terms of cultivating our mindfulness so that we will get there one day, what you can be aware of consistently is feelings in your physical body, and you can be aware of them as they change and as they cease. So in terms of daily practice, the question was, how do we contemplate the 5 khandhas in our daily practice? So the one that I would encourage people to focus upon is feeling. So that means when you're walking, you're aware of the feelings on the bottom of your feet. When you're sitting, you're aware of the feeling of the pressure of the body sitting in a chair or on a sofa or on the meditation mat. When you have time, you're aware of the in-breath. When you don't have to be engaged with other things that absorb your attention, in between, you keep checking in with the in-breath, keep checking in with the out-breath, and then develop an interest in noticing change and cessation. So oftentimes the mindfulness isn't good enough to notice the moment that a feeling arises, but we can train ourselves to notice when it changes and ceases. And this training is very powerful, noticing change and cessation. Change and cessation. So obviously with an in-breath, you can notice when the in-breath stops. That's the important thing about staying in that space, not allowing the mind to go out in between the in and out breaths, that kind of happens. But if we train ourselves to be still and in the same spot that we observe the in and out breathing, an in breath comes in, it ceases, there's a space. An out breath, it ceases, there's a space. And we notice cessation, cessation, cessation. The reason I'm recommending that you notice cessation is this insight into impermanence. When we really begin to notice this, the feeling of the footstep, when we place the foot, it has a feeling, it arises and ceases. When we lift the foot off the ground again, that feeling ceased. We place the foot, there's another feeling, we lift it off, it ceased. When we really begin to notice this, feeling ceased, another feeling ceased, breath ceased, another feeling ceased. What the insight into anicca or impermanence will lead to is an experience of emptiness, because the self-view is grasping at an assumption of permanence which isn't there. And so when the permanence isn't there, the assumption that it's me, a solid unchanging me, is there, but it's not based on truth. It's a bad habit that we have, very deep one. But when you notice cessation, 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 the foundation of ignorance upon which the self-view is functioning is eroded. And the self-view, that feeling of being a self, will disappear for moments. It's like, and then you experience emptiness, empty of self. Not I, not mine, a body with feelings. So what I want people to focus on, what I would recommend, is focusing on knowing a body as a body, knowing feelings as feelings. And what happens, Ajahn says this, that the best way to cultivate the 4 foundations of mindfulness is using the body as the foundation. So a lot of people want to contemplate their mind states and they want to do kind of psychology and stuff. You want to get into the chittanupassana. You want to notice how mind states arise from certain sense contacts. But what happens is that mind states are deluding. We think we're going to have a contemplation about our mind states, and what happens is it leads on to another thought, and you end up far away from your wisdom contemplation, and you end up involved in some unwise contemplation. So it's the consistency of the knowing feelings as feelings, knowing a body as a body, and investigating the body as parts, that creates a kind of a foundation of powerful mindfulness. And that powerful, consistent mindfulness is the mindfulness that will begin to be able to see sense contact and different types of consciousness and having insights into that. But it's the same, because it's all occurring in the same space. The mindfulness of the body as a body and mindfulness as feelings, that very same mindfulness is going to start having insights into the arising and ceasing of mind states. But we don't take the arising and ceasing of mind states, that could be one of the sankharas, karmic formations. We don't take that as our meditation object because it's too tricky. The mind is too fast and the mind deludes us. So we cultivate a good body-based, consistent awareness, and that awareness will lead to insights into the arising and ceasing of mind states. But we make the awareness of the feelings the practice. So when it comes to meditation, and suppose there's a mood, don't get involved with the content of the thoughts. Look at the feeling in the area of the heart. And you're giving your attention to the breath because you don't want to get deluded by the feelings. You don't want to fall into the feelings. So you're using your breath as the anchor or as the eye in the storm, but you're broadly aware of these feelings associated with a mind state. So if you're angry, there'll be heat, there'll be contraction, and it does move. So if you develop sensitivity and you're looking in your heart area, you will see that anger is this burning kind of swirling thing. And so is lust, but they have a different kind of a feeling texture to them. But you don't look at the content of the thought. You don't get involved in the story. Use the breath as the eye in the storm, or the breath as the anchor, and have a look at the feelings and be determined to notice the way they change. And then they do. And that's the same with any of the 5 hindrances. They will all have their feeling component. Desire is kind of dizzying. Aversion is hot and painful, sometimes icy. Sloth, you can feel the dullness and the fuzziness. It has feelings. And so there's really a lot to be gained from being aware of the breath in the chest area and noticing feelings associated with the various hindrances. And then also you will notice the feelings that arise due to skillful and correct meditation, because what will happen is those feelings associated with hindrances, the dullness, the hotness, the crampedness, will become feelings of tranquility, rapture, serenity, spaciousness. And then you can notice the arising, staying for some time, and changing of the more wholesome spectrum of feelings. So, but you take your basic awareness of the body walking and the body sitting, and your awareness of the breath as the foundation. That's what gives you the consistent mindfulness. As the mindfulness gets more established and more clear, then you begin to be able to observe the feelings associated with mind states, and watch the way they arise and cease and change and swirl around. And I once had a conversation with Lompo Panya Wado, the most senior Western disciple of Lungda Mahabua, who was purported to be an anagami. So just one level less than arahant, a very, very esteemed and respected practitioner. So I got to pay respects to him as a novice. And he said that he developed a lot of insight by just being aware of feelings in the chest and abdomen area rising and ceasing. He said that he developed a lot of insight doing that. So not just hearing that from Ajahn, I discussed it with an anagami, and he said that that was very, very fruitful for him. And so, yes, contemplating the body khandha, contemplating the feelings, is what I think we can do in our daily life. And then the insights, the basic insights into the impermanence of feelings and the elemental nature of the body, the mindfulness that grows from that practice will lead to having insights into the arising and ceasing of consciousness. But it's more advanced practice. But it's the very same mindfulness that will see it. And it's the consistency of the body-based awareness that will grow the mindfulness to be of a caliber that can begin to have insights into the arising and ceasing of consciousness. So I think that's how I'm going to answer the question. Hope it was helpful.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ajahn. Ajahn, question number 2. Dear Ajahn, even though there are no separate and permanent self-entities, you speak about karma as if there were. It puzzles me. Could you please explain some more about this? Thank you.
Yes, I'll do my best. The thing about doubts is that different types of people have different types of doubts. And I think I know what this person's question is, and I think I know what they're doing with their mind. So obviously there is a conventional being, okay? Somebody logged into this Zoom session, a conventional being. So the fact that the Buddha says ultimately there's no self doesn't mean that there's nothing. So the Buddha isn't teaching nothingness. The Buddha is teaching emptiness. Emptiness isn't nothingness. Emptiness of what? Emptiness of a solid, unchanging self. Nobody says that there isn't a conventional self. So that there is a conventional self. Ajahn was born as Brett in Brisbane. He spent a lot of time on the beach. He came to Thailand when he was 23. He became a Buddhist monk. There's a being with a story. And then not self is ultimate truth. So our practice leads us to have glimpses of and eventually experience the ultimate truth, which is emptiness of self and awareness of arising and ceasing, impermanence, awareness of unsatisfactoriness, awareness of conventional self, and awareness of the ultimate truth. And it leads, correct practice leads to going beyond the conventions, in as much as you don't have to be born into the conventional world again. But take, for example, Lord Buddha in the suttas. Many, many, many times, the sutta begins with, such and such a person came to pay respects to the Buddha. And when the courteous and amiable speech was finished, the Buddha instructed this person such. So what does that mean? Courteous and amiable speech. It means that the Buddha was saying, hey king, how's the kingdom? Hey farmer, how are the crops? Hey cloth weaver, how's the weaving going? How's the family? How's the cousins? How's the marriages? How was the harvest? Etc. So he's talking to beings according to their status, according to their conventional existence. And then he teaches them about dana, about keeping sila, and about contemplating anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And many of them, at the end of the conversation, are enlightened. But even the ones who became arahants, they still come and bow to the Buddha, and they still know who they were conventionally. They don't obliterate the personality. They see through it. So with regards, they see through it, but it's still there. So it's like when they praise Lord Buddha, they praise him that one of the ways they praise the Buddha, although he is liberated, transcendent, pure, the Buddha, thus come and thus gone, he understands the conventions of the day and speaks in ordinary language. It's actually one of the points of praise that such a sagacious, pure, liberated being can still have a basic chat with you. You're conventional you. He hasn't become so rarefied and aloof that he doesn't understand what conventions are. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to teach anybody. So it's our good fortune that understanding and experience of transcendental truth doesn't negate conventional reality. And great beings, I mean, I get to spend quite a bit of time with Ajahn, and I believe that he's liberated. And we talk about any number of things, and he still has a great sense of humor. So there's still a latent personality in a conventional being that I can have a relationship with. And that being can go into the emptiness of experiencing Nibbana whenever he wants to, and drop the conditioned world for periods of time. Sadhu. Very happy for him. But with regards to the question, beings receiving karma, so the conventional being has to receive the karma of what they do. So if you killed somebody when you're a teenager, even if you didn't mean to, you're going to have moments of regret about that when you're a middle-aged person, and probably even when you're old. It's like, yeah, I really wish I didn't kill that person. That thought will continue to ripen because it's a heavy karmic activity. I'm just giving an example from within this lifetime. Or you had a passionate affair and your partner got so heartbroken they decided to divorce you. You might feel for the remainder of your life, that affair wasn't worth it. I wish I didn't do that. It's like there are consequences. What you do now, the being you will become in the future will have feelings about it. So if you do skillful things, you're going to be experiencing future happiness. And if you do unskillful things, you're going to be experiencing future miserableness. It's just, that's the way it is, depending on the heaviness of karma. And if you do lots and lots and lots of neutral things, you're going to be having lots of neutral feelings. I mean, it's kind of nice, you know. And keep your mind in the middle. So there is a mental continuum. Everybody has their mind stream. And that mind stream can be purified and established in Nibbana. But until it is purified and established in Nibbana, it is going to be grasping at conventional reality in one form or another. And that conventional being is going to have to receive the fruits of past deeds. So there was a story, I think it was a young teenager came up to Ajahn and said, if everything's not self, that means I can make bad karma this lifetime because I won't be the one experiencing it next lifetime. And Ajahn picked up his stick and he poked him in the stomach really hard. And the teenager said, ouch. And Ajahn said, you know that feeling of a being who's hurting? If you make bad karma this life, that same feeling, you who's in pain, you'll be experiencing that next life. Do you get it? It's like, so the things that the conventional being does, the things that you make other beings feel, if you have intention, sometimes even if you don't have intention, because there's karma caused from intention and there's unintentional karma as well. Some things just are unskillful, and if you don't know that, you don't intend to make bad karma, but you do something unskillful, there will be a negative karmic consequence, whether you know it or not, whether you intended it or not. But it's the things that we do, the ripple effect, how that affects other conscious beings. You will have experiences in the future which make you feel similarly. So it might not be the exact same thing. It might not be that you, because you shot somebody, you'll be shot. But it will be, something will happen that will cause you to be feeling painful, piercing feelings and be separated from your life younger than you might have hoped. So not necessarily someone coming and shooting you. So yes, the conventional being makes karma, and the conventional being, if not yet liberated, will have to experience the results of that karma. That's conventional reality. And so I don't myself feel that confused about it. Just because the ultimate truth is not self doesn't negate conventional reality. Well, we're all here staring at each other on these screens. You have a conventional personality and a conventional life. Just because you've heard teachings on not self, it didn't all disappear. It would actually be wonderful if it did, wouldn't it? You can read through the not self sutta. Oh, form is not self, feelings are not self, consciousness is not self. Okay, great. Obliterated myself into emptiness. If only it was that easy. Doesn't happen, does it? You can chant the sutra on not self 100 times, 1,000 times, and you wake up in the morning and, oh, there's still a feeling of a self, grumpy, you have to go to work. So you need a lot of consistent sati and samadhi and some wisdom to start having insights into the ultimate reality that will, and then when you get familiar with that, you can place your mind in temporary liberations. If you're a stream enterer, you can have access to the experience of nibbana more regularly. If you're an arahant, your mind is established in nibbana. You know nothing is self. But the arahants can still tell their life story. There's many, many biographies of arahants in Thailand. Just because they became arahants didn't mean they didn't have a story. And if you look at the suttas, the Buddha is very, very often talking about the past life causal conditions which gave rise to a Buddha. The conditioning factor for a Buddha was the being who was a bodhisattva who spent millions of lives cultivating virtue. The conditioning factor for Sariputta and Moggallana, the chief disciples, were these beings that very well developed beings who saw a foremost disciple and were very, very inspired and decided to be just like him. They have a story, they have an aspiration, they have a conventional being, and then they have an epic samsaric journey, being conventional beings, cultivating the requisite virtue, so that when they become the arahant, they don't just have access to the insight into emptiness, they also have these remarkable abilities to go ahead and teach conventional beings and get them to see through conventions and liberate themselves. So yes, you will experience the results of the things that you do. And I can see in my recent life, for example, when I find myself meditating alone in the temple of the Emerald Buddha, for example, it's this extraordinary, there is this kind of, how is this possible? How did this happen? Is this really happening? Yes, it's COVID. Yes, I've been invited to teach at the palace, and I wanted to sit a bit longer than the other monks, so I'm sitting alone in the temple of the Emerald Buddha. And the previous time that I went there were 30,000 people going there a day. The very idea of being able to meditate alone in the Emerald Buddha wouldn't even be something that I would consider. And now it is something that I have done several times. How is it possible? It's possible because of karmic causes. Before this time, of all of the monks I know in the Ajahn tradition, I have gone and paid respects to the temple of the Emerald Buddha most. I didn't go and pay respects there wanting to be able to meditate it there by myself. I just went to pay respects, and I was honored and happy to have my little corner, stick my earplugs in nice and deep and meditate and share the space with thousands of others. But I can see that going and paying respects and meditating and chanting sows conditions for having similar opportunities in the future. The more you do something with sincerity and with conviction and with faith and with energy, there's a lot of intention there, you're going to find these kind of things ripen. And it really is like, how did this happen? This is so different to my daily life. But when I review causal factors, oh, well, the other 25 times that I came here to meditate, pay respect, showed great reverence and respect to the place, was probably a karmic cause that made it possible that even though it's closed, here I am meditating here by myself now. A similar thing happened in Bodh Gaya. Like, I'm sitting down meditating, facing the Chedi day after day, dealing with the noise, the smells, the crowds. I love it anyway, but it's like a lot of stuff. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes and says to me, we're cleaning the Chedi spire. There's an opportunity. A monk who I knew who was involved in gold plating the Chedi spire, he asked me to help make some holy water so that they could bathe the Chedi spire. They do it once every 3 years. And I said to him, well, on one condition. He said, what's that? I said, well, I see you've got these stairs going up to the top of the Chedi. I want to meditate. My 2000th hour was coming up. I want to meditate on top of the Chedi. And so the monk said, no, if people are seeing you do it, everyone wants to do it. I said, okay, well, I'm going to spread my loving kindness from my usual sitting posture, my usual spot, because I've got to complete my 2000 hours. Next day he comes back and he's like, all right, you can go up there. So all of a sudden, I find myself meditating on top of the Mahabodhi temple. It's literally a 1 in a million opportunity. Of all of the people that have gone to Bodh Gaya and paid respects and been in the crowds, you wouldn't even dare to imagine that one day you could be sitting on scaffolding, facing the gold tip, breathing gold spire, breathing in the fresh, fragrant air, aloof from the noises, lovely, gentle breeze, getting to make your aspirational prayers on the top of the navel of the universe, which we believe it is. But when you look at karmic causes, it has a karmic cause. Like, even though I'm sitting there, how is this possible? Wow, this is amazing. Well, the 2000 hours of meditation that occurred before it, obviously. And that's what makes it possible to be able to have a special opportunity. I've had similar many times in my life. I'm looking at Francois on the screen here. We went to Melbourne. We were intending to attend the Dalai Lama's teachings, and we weren't expecting anything particularly special. But it turns out that my seat was in the front row on the stage, 5 meters from His Holiness. And it turns out that I was the only Theravadan bhikkhu who turned up. So then I was told that I had to chant. Well, somebody came and asked me, can you chant the Mangala Sutta? At which point I said, I can, but I'm not going to. And then that person says, oh, yes, you are, because the Dalai Lama wants a Theravadan bhikkhu to chant it. So I'm sitting on the stage and there's 7,000 people there and the Dalai Lama's 5 meters away. And he says, okay, who's chanting the Mangala Sutta? Okay, you. And so these kind of things happen occasionally in my life. And there I was, I'm chanting the Mangala Sutra in front of 7,000 people at the request of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And he's right there chanting with me, Namo Dassam Bhagava. Yeah. And it's like, that feeling is, how did I get here? How did this happen? Because it's not my normal experience in life, but you can deduce from it that there must be karmic connections from the past, and I've probably been respectful to previous Dalai Lamas or beings similar to him, that all of a sudden I'm 5 meters from him, shaking his hand, chanting for him. He's looking at me, thank you. And I get to spend 4 days, 5 meters from him. These things have happened in my life in moments, and where I can only deduce karmic causes from previous lives must have conditioned this. Otherwise, how is it possible? And I tell you what else, just between you and me, if I knew on that day that I had to chant the Mangala Sutta in front of 7,000 people alone, with television cameras and the Dalai Lama and everybody staring at me, I would not have got out of bed on that day. So you can, and so thank goodness I didn't know, because I made some more good karma. But because I am a little bit shy, there's no way I would have volunteered for that. And so I'm just making a point where I have seen, and a similar thing when I first turned up at Wat Nana Chat, because in those days we didn't have Google. I'm turning up at this monastery in northeast Thailand because somebody told me about it, where there's an English-speaking abbot that teach West foreign monks in English. It's in the middle of the rice fields. It's in a different country. And there's an abbot teaching English and there's monks that teach English and they welcome you to become a monk. And I remember I put on the white robes and I took the 8 precepts and I was thinking of becoming a monk. And there was just this feeling of, how did I get here? And you contemplate it and it's like, well, the causes for this have to come from previous births. How could you get there otherwise? Somebody had to tell me about the place. Like I said, there was not yet Google search engines. I didn't know that there was a monastery for English speaking people in northeast Thailand in the middle of the rice fields. But I ended up there and I ended up becoming a bhikkhu there. And I can only deduce that is from karma, karmic causes generated in a previous birth. So that just goes to show that what we're doing now is going to affect our next life. That's why I'm telling these stories. Whatever you're doing, wholesome, neutral, or unwholesome, it's going to have fruits. It's going to have consequences. And there is a conventional being that has to progress along this game of snakes and ladders in samsara to a point where you go beyond the snakes and the ladders. And you have to sow lots of causes for lots of ladders and stop sowing causes for snakes. And you're going to get to the end of the game. But you have to work with the rules. So I hope that answered the question to some degree.
Thank you, Prajan. Prajan, question number 3. Dear Ajahn, do devas also have breath like humans to practice breath meditation? I heard that one can only make merits in human realm. Is this true? If so, what is the difference that causes being in other realms unable to make merits? Sadhu.
So I'm actually not aware if the devas have breath or not. I don't know that. And I would like to know. That's a question that you could ask Ajahn or Lompopiak, beings who can see devas and observe their bodies or ask them questions. But with regards, can devas meditate or can they make merit? Yes, they can. So I believe the devas are probably practicing more samatha rather than vipassana. So they can take meditation objects. For example, they can consider the wholesome qualities of the Buddha. They can consider the wholesome qualities of the Arahants, and they can make their mind bright and glad. That's the anusatis, Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati. And it is, I have heard that there is a sutta where Sariputta was talking about the destination of Sotapannas, Sakadagamis, Anagamis. So when beings begin to uproot fetters, after a Sotapanna, you can't be born more than 7 times. There's no more attachment to rites and superstitious attachment to rites and rituals. There's a deep insight into not self. That insight will lead to liberation, no more than a 7th birth. With the Sakadagami insight, there is a weakening of the power of greed and hatred. And and there's a once returner. As an anagami, no more greed, no more hatred, very subtle sense of self, still lingering, non-returner to this world, but Arahant, no more births. So Sariputta was explaining this to someone, and a great number of devas had come to listen to his teaching. And a great number of those devas attained to arahantship while listening to Sariputta describe the destinations of the different types of enlightened beings. So I can't say with my capacity at the moment that it really happened. But what I can say is the same source of suttas, which gave us the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 noble truths, etc., also contains these kind of stories where, and there's another one where Lord Buddha is teaching Sakha, Indra, on top of a mountain in Rajgir. So Indra has a bunch of questions. When Indra has finished asking his questions, at one point during the conversation, Indra attained to stream entry. So it might be the case that they don't have the insight through the awareness of the arising and cessation of feelings, or through the contemplation of the 4 elements, for example. But it does appear to be the case that if they're listening to Dhamma and they're they're hearing a description of ultimate truth from somebody who's realized it, it does appear to be the case that they are able to glimpse that ultimate truth with the direction of a great practitioner. So evidently, devas can attain deep insight and liberation, and they definitely can meditate, and they definitely can produce merits. So, for example, when Luang Por Biek came to our relic enshrining ceremony, he said that devas came and offered gold and silver flowers, and then the whole area around the Chedi was covered in gold and silver flowers, but they were more subtle element than our form element. But for the devas, they're real, conventionally speaking. So the devas relinquished some of their wealth as an offering to the Chedi, deva gold and deva silver. And a being who had the capacity to see that was able to see it. So yes, they're making merit through making offerings. And obviously the meditation, when they come and rejoice. So when the devas come and rejoice in the good deeds of others, they're also producing merit, the merit that comes from mudita citta. So I think the subtle body beings that can't make much merit is, if you're a ghost and you just don't have stuff that you can give away, it's very difficult to make merit, isn't it? If you don't have enough food, if you don't have enough clothes, even for yourself, how are you going to share some of that? So this is the thing, this is why we have to avoid these lower realms. We want to be born into a situation where we have things to share and where we share them, whether that be our time or our skills or our resources. And then even more difficult is the hell beings. So if you're in the hell realm and you're experiencing fairly consistent misery, it's very difficult to have a wholesome mind state, and it's very difficult to share things if you don't have them. So those are the subtle body beings that it's more difficult to make merit, ghosts and hell beings. But devas can make merit. I think our particular good fortune in being human beings is that we do have this 4-element body. And there's one kind of brief teaching where Lord Buddha explains to someone who's trying to find the end of the universe. He says, do not seek the end of the universe, seek the consciousness with no showing, where the 4 elements find no footing. That's where you'll find Nibbana. And he also says, it's within this fathom-long body, liberation. You don't have to find the end of the universe. It's within here, in this space of your body and the mind. That's where you're going to find Nibbana. And the big hint that he gave us was, find that type of consciousness where the 4 elements find no footing. So if you want to know how to do that, you do your body contemplation, get your awareness of bones established, and then when you take your mindfulness of bones as the object, then you try to separate the awareness, that which knows bones, try to separate the awareness from the element, and the mind can experience letting go of the 4 elements and have an experience of Nibbana. Luang Por Man, Luang Por Cha, Ajahn, many great bhikkhus have had higher insights when contemplating the body as elements and then separating that awareness out from the elements. This is our good fortune as human beings, that we have the wealth of a human body where it's easy, relatively speaking, to contemplate the 4 elements and separate awareness of the elements from the elements. When you have a more subtle type of body, it becomes more difficult to do that. So that's our treasure. And a lot of people, human beings, are going to be like, oh, I'm over this place. It smells bad. It hurts. There's catastrophe after catastrophe. I want to break. I want to go to heaven. And apparently, wise devas are hoping for a human rebirth because they want to be able to produce merits in the human realm, all the opportunities it gives us to cultivate patience, develop loving kindness, be generous, forgive. And they want to have a form body, a body that got born from a womb, because they recognize that it's such a ripe situation for developing insight, and insight that can liberate the mind. So here we are wanting to go to heaven, beings in heaven wanting to come and exchange places with us. So it's one of the tricks in samsara, isn't it? Is to not feel too sorry for yourself, recognize the good fortune that you have, and use your opportunity. So I offer that for your reflection.
Question 5. During my meditation, I noticed I was too caught up with the in-breath and out-breath to the point of creating the breath to ensure that there is an in-breath and out-breath. Hence, it becomes unnatural. Subsequently, I explored a method of being aware of the breath movement instead of not being too concerned whether there is an out-breath followed by an in-breath or vice versa. I found this method helps me to be more aware of my breath and pay longer attention to it. However, I'm not sure if this is the correct method. Ajhan's advice is much appreciated.
So language has limitations, and the experience of observing the breath is awareness, knowing a feelings that are constantly changing. So we have to use conventional language to get a basic idea of what the meditation object is. And when the mind has a lot of thinking, as it often does in the beginning of the session, we do have to encourage the mind to really notice the beginning, the middle, and end of an in-breath, the beginning, middle, and end of an out-breath, and know when you're breathing in and know when you're breathing out. What happens is, because we come to the meditation with a sense of self, it's a habitual, deep habit that we have of grasping at the body, grasping at the feelings, my knee pain, my headache, my bad mood. I mean, we're just constantly interpreting things through this filter of delusion, but it's very consistent. So what happens is people end up controlling the breath. Here I am, me, doing the breathing. And so what we have to do when we notice that you're not observing the natural breath, that you're actually controlling the breath, is yes, you try to relax the awareness with which you're watching the breath. You're not doing the breathing. You're being aware of the natural breath. And then basically through trial and error, or through just doing it a lot, you will find the way to observe your breath, which is peaceful, where you're consistently aware of in and out breathing. And you might, every different person would describe it differently, because that's the nature of language and conventions. And everybody's experience will probably be slightly different, and they'll explain it differently. But the point is, there is an awareness of when the breath is coming in, and there's an awareness of when the breath is coming out, and it's peaceful to observe it. But basically, if this practitioner has found a way to observe the breath in a manner that they're not squeezing it or controlling it or holding on to it. So nobody's saying hold on to the breath. This is the trick. It's like you're training your mindfulness to be aware, but what happens is there's a sense of self that wants to pick things up and wants to control things. That's normal. When we notice it, drop it. Awareness is what we're aiming for. So you're just mindfully knowing the breath. And sometimes we have to say that. I do say it often. Mindfully aware of the natural breath, the ordinary breath. You take a few deep breaths at the beginning of the session, but once you're into the session, you're just allowing it to be as it is, and you're noticing it as it changes. So the job of the meditation is to notice the change. It's not to hold or squeeze or control. So we just remind ourselves of that, and I do believe that the metta practice, one of the reasons I put emphasis upon it is the metta practice, this quality of loving acceptance, helps to grind down the one who wants to control things in a nice way. So the metta practice, establishing loving acceptance, helps us to be with the breath as it is, without trying to control it, without trying to make it different, without judging it. So yes, observe the breath however way is comfortable. One of the other things I often say is observe the breath where you can feel it or experience it most consistently in a peaceful way. So that's different for different people. For myself, I observe the breath mostly in the chest area. A lot of people, it's the tip of the nose and the top of the lip. Other people, Burmese tradition, it's in the abdomen. And they're all good. But it's wherever that you can be aware of the breath arising, ceasing. And the job is to know the feelings and notice they're changing, not to control them or grasp them. I mean, different people will have to experiment whatever works for you, whichever part of that kind of breath body that you can observe it, experiment, find the place, and whatever manner of observing it that leads to an increase in clarity and peacefulness and well-being. That's the correct way for you. So wishing you all success in your breath meditation. Much peace and insight. Is Shivani there? Where are you?
I'm here, Ajahn.
Do you have a chant ready for us? Okay, and do you have a version of the Mangala Suttas to share with us on this auspicious day? I miss India, so I look forward to my fortnightly listening to Shivani session, as do many in our group.
Asivracha balanam Panditanam cha sevara Puja cha pujaniyanam Etang mangalam tamam Patirup desvasocha Uppecha kata punyata Atta sammapani dhicha Etang mangalam tamam Bahu satchancha sippancha Vinayocha susikhito Subhasita chaya vacha Etang mangalam tamam Mata pitu upadhanam Uttadarasa sangaho Anakula chakamanta Etang mangalam tamam Danancha dhammacharya cha Nyatakanancha sangaho Anavajjani kammani Etang mangalam tamam Aditi viditi papa Majjapana cha sayamu Appamado cha dhammesu Etang mangalam tamam Garvo cha nivato cha Santutti cha katanyuta saranam etang mangalam uttamam khanti cha suvachasata samananam cha dasanam kalena dhamma sakaccha etang mangalam uttamam tapo cha brahmacharyam cha ariya satchana dasanam nibbana satchikiriya cha etang mangalam uttamam Uttasya lokadhammi Chittang yasna kampati Asokam virajang kimam Mangalam uttamam Etadisani tattvana Sappatha aparajita Sappatha sothing gachanti Sankte sangmangalam uttamam
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You might get to be the one that they play at Mahabodhi Temple in 5 a.m. in the morning.
Sadhu, 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 Ajahn. That would be an honor, that would be a blessing.
Thank you very much, Ajahn, for
Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ajahn.
Ajahn. Thank you very
Sadhu,
much.
sadhu, sadhu.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you,
Ajahn. Wishing you all well.
Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn. Bye.